Black Earth offers a full suite of humic solutions, from high-purity granules to powder, liquid, and soluble formulations, all powered by pure humulite. Trusted by growers worldwide from one of the world's rarest humulite reserves. Grow stronger with the power of Black Earth humulite. Learn more from Mind to Market by visiting blackearth.com.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Friday edition of the show. Hey, thanks so much, everybody, for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. We greatly do appreciate it. Also, to all of you on the RealAg Radio podcast, thanks for listening. Thanks for downloading, streaming, and we do appreciate that as equally as well indeed. Okay, today on the program, we got a lot of fun. So just to give you a bit of heads up here, because of the July 4th holiday, we taped on Thursday. Okay, so if something crazy happened on Thursday night, Friday morning, you're like, what, these buffoons didn't even talk about it. We record Thursday afternoon this week, so just want a bit of a disclaimer on that to mark it in the ground and let you know that. But we got a lot of great insights for you here, some opinions. We're going to talk about that U.S.-Vietnam trade deal. Did Carney roll over on this digital services tax? What about some of the biggest issues of the week in the world of agriculture? And we'll get to all of it. Okay, we're going to have a lot of fun here today, very much so. We've also got a beef market update for you today. Anne Wasko, the Gateway Livestock Exchange, will be with us to talk about these cattle prices, as we are definitely, with Canada Day and July 4th in the same week as it is every year, is definitely grilling season. We are in peak grilling season now, and full throttle ahead on all of that. And we'll break down the fundamentals of what's going on in the cattle markets. And of course, I don't think I mentioned it, but the Real Ag Issues panel today is Kelvin, Heppner, Lyndsey Smith, and myself. Now, if you have any feedback on today's show, you are more than welcome to provide me with your feedback. My email address is shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also call the Real Ag feedback line, 855-776-6147. And you can also find Real Agriculture across all the different social media platforms for sure. Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, we got Anne Wasko standing by right after this. Today is the launch of Invigor Gold, hybrid Brassica gensea, not in the traditional canola areas. Joined by Stuart Brandt, global head of canola breeding. So gensea has been around for a while. This isn't your grandpa's gensea.
We've been able to improve the bottom end of the yield to make it more competitive, but we've also improved it so when times are better and growers are getting some moisture and they have maybe a little bit better organic matter content, the yields can compete with the best Napus varieties. Even in a good year, these will compete very well, and often that was a challenge with some of the early gensea, that work that had been done. In the traditional, what I would call canola growing area, Napus still outperforms gensea, but if we get into the brown soil zones, areas like this, and there would be some areas in and around North Dakota where this would be a very good fit and be competitive with Napus in good times and outperform it in tough times.
Invigor Gold, hybrid Brassica gensea, launching in Montana and the Northern Plains 2027, Central Plains in 2029, and hopefully Canada sometime in the early 2030s. Agriculture.bsf.us.
Since 2014, FP Genetics has led the way in bringing hybrid fall rye to Canadian farms. As the original purveyor, we've built decades of experience and trust right here at home. Canadian-owned, farmer-focused, and grounded in real agronomic knowledge, FP Genetics is your go-to source for rye. The future of rye in Canada starts with experience, and experience starts with FP Genetics. Visit fpgenetics.ca today.
Lots always happening in the cattle markets. Let's have the beef market update with Anne Wasko, the Gateway Livestock Exchange. Anne, how are we doing?
Good. How about you today, Shaun?
I'm doing pretty good. Today's beef market update is brought to you by Ag Expert, deep in the field and deep in the data to back up your decisions on the farm or the ranch. Get started at agexpert.ca. Okay, and we're officially in the dog days of summer here in July. Dog days for the cattle markets, or not so much?
Well, I mean, first of all, you're right. This was a holiday in both countries. We had our Canada Day back on Tuesday, and of course, tomorrow will be the U.S. holiday. So smaller kills, certainly. But the market has moved off of the highs from about a month ago, and this week was kind of, depending on where you're at. For example, in the south in Kansas, the market was $1 to $2 lower this week. 222 to 224 was their live trade. And Nebraska kind of held together pretty steady with last week, 230 to 232 on the live and 368 to 370 delivered. So that was pretty steady, but again, off about $10 live off of where the highs would have been a month ago. The other news, and you talked a little bit about it on your show yesterday, Shaun, I think, but of course, in terms of USDA making the announcement of the U.S.-Mexico border reopening over the screwworm issue. And it's going to be very much a very slow, phased-in reopening, one border crossing next week, another one the following week. So it's going to take some time between now and September to open those border points. And again, I think like we've seen through the first half of this year, it'll very much depend on how things are going along and what they find. So markets reacted a bit on announcement day, but then have really, futures have kind of bounced back after that. And it was more the psychology of the news than actual supply.
Yeah, well, and you can see like this feeder cattle supply out of Mexico is critical. It's really important for the U.S. cattle feeder, and they're trying to do what they can to get that flow restarted. But we've seen them say, hey, we're going to sort of a trickle opening. There could be a trickle close. And so it's hard to read and sort of, you don't try to outguess this, I guess maybe is a way to look at it, because who knows where we go from here. Hopefully they're able to keep this under control and keep it out of the U.S.
Exactly. And just on that, on the number side here in the first half of 25, there's been just a few over 200,000 head come, whereas, in the entire year last year, it was closer to 1.2 million head. So that's how much, it's a fraction of where we would normally be at this time.
So I just have a question. I don't know why I'm putting up my hand, but those cattle that have not come into the U.S., any word, are they just being fed out in Mexico somehow? Or are they what are they doing?
That's what I understand, Shaun, is that certainly there's a portion of those will be moved into U.S. Or into Mexican feedlots and finished along that way. And some of them maybe just in backgrounding, holding type to see what happens with this border. So I think it probably is a little bit of everything that we've talked about.
Yep.
So that was kind of the news I wanted to talk about in terms of the U.S., but bring it back to local markets. We've actually seen the Alberta fat cattle market hold on considerably better than that U.S. market that's kind of $10 off the high. Alberta markets are only $1 or $2 off the high. So because of our holiday on Tuesday, we're kind of still waiting for trade. Feedlots are asking for 505 delivered. Last week it was 503. So that's kind of where we're at. We might only be steady money, but just so you kind of got an idea that the market is holding in there, that would put an average right around $3 for people that are looking for that live conversion.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. Big numbers kind of just roll off your tongue now.
Yeah.
Because we haven't talked for a wee bit, I just wanted to update our listeners on how the on-feed numbers looked in June, because we weren't able to talk about this. So both countries, we're seeing smaller on-feed numbers. In Western Canada, the last report was slightly under last year, 7% smaller than the 5-year average. So that's the kind of trend we've been looking at. In the U.S., their June 1 report was 1% smaller from last year, 2% smaller than the 5-year average. Placements were down 8%, and again, largely due to this Mexican feeder import issue, especially into those southern feedlots, as you mentioned. So we'll see, what goes on, but this has been a trend we've seen all year long. The other piece that we talked about quite a bit leading into my last report here was how many, in Western Canada, how many forward sales of calves for fall delivery we've been seeing. So CanFax put together a bit of a summary in terms of all of the calves sold in June for October and November delivery. And this is, I'll just give you some rough numbers, but a 550 weight steer for delivery this fall, averaging right around 590, and the matching heifer around 520. So those numbers are certainly higher than what the spot market is. So certainly optimistic in terms of the fall run and pricing through this fall is what we've seen. The other thing I thought was timely, because we're finished first half of 25, and these markets, these prices have been out of this world amazing. Just quickly where we're at. So fed cattle in Alberta averaging for the first 6 months of this year, 283. That's 17% higher than last year. And just to comparison, keeping in step with the US averaged 214 US, that's 16% higher. So it was good to see both markets are moving together. That's over a 6-month average, but still. Calf prices are 550 weight average, 532 in the first half of this year, up 27%. Feeders averaging 393 at 850 pounds. That's 22% higher. And slaughter cows take the record in terms of percentage increase. They averaged 209 in the first half of this year. That's 28% higher than the first half of last year. So amazing numbers. It'll be interesting to see what the second half brings. We've set the sights quite high in terms of where we've been trading here in the first half of the year, but demand remains strong. Boxed beef prices continue to be strong. That's going to ease off seasonally now as we head into as you open the segment, the dog days of summer.
Yeah.
But it's been a great run.
Yeah, it's definitely grilling season now. It's definitely in full effect from, kind of between now and Labor Day. Would that be sort of that this is kind of the zone for max grilling, right?
It is, although in terms of retail featuring and whatnot, I think things do slow off after the July 4th holiday. As you get into that heat, turns into a little bit more of a hamburger, hot dog kind of market per se, as you get into the heat of the summer. So those big, the Memorial Day and the Father's Day and the July 4th, those are the biggies. And things do tend to slow down a little bit as we go into the heat of summer.
Yeah, I'm not going to, the hot dog thing, I'm not judging. Like
I had to spit it out.
A nice summer day, a hot dog, and the mustard is key. Now, everyone's not going to agree with that. And
I have some friends that will already be arguing with me once they hear this segment. But anyway.
Yeah. Hey, it takes all kinds of cuts. They can't all be about ribeyes and T-bones, all you cowboys and cowgirls out there. So that's we gotta have respect for the hot dog as well. One of the things we talked about with Arlen Suderman from StoneX on Wednesday's show was just we just demand. You mentioned the consumer continues to come to the trough, so to speak, and be willing to pay for beef and beef products. And it kind of has sort of readjusted, probably for everybody that went through some ag economic classes. And, you talk about inelastic demand where price really does not impact demand. It feels like beef, how we would view beef has really shifted here over the past 5 years. It's incredible.
Yeah. And I think it goes to, well, first and foremost, the quality piece in terms of that high, whether we're talking choice, prime, those types of cuts. But then the other piece of it that we've seen it this summer is the wide array of types of cuts we have that come from this animal.
Yeah.
And so whether we're talking ground beef demand has been absolutely amazing in the first half of this year. So again, we've got, different places to land in terms of where that demand piece, but overall, it's been certainly supporting these higher prices.
Yeah. Hey, Anne, thanks so much for joining us here. Have yourself, this is a weird week because we have Canada Day. We got July 4th. There's a lot happening. Hey, more fireworks and more barbecuing and grilling and smoking, the better. So have yourself a great weekend.
Hear, hear. Okay, you too, Shaun.
Great stuff. Hey, we'll be right back here on RealAg Radio for the RealAg Issues panel. Kelvin Heppner, Lyndsey Smith, stand by right after this.
Right now, Saskatchewan wheat producers like you see a $33 return for every dollar invested in wheat breeding. And because of your contribution, Sask Wheat can drive innovation by funding research and initiatives that make wheat profitable and sustainable for generations to come. Varietal improvements, including better yields, are all made possible by you. See your impact and how we support it at every step at saskwheat.ca.
Hi, I'm Bernard Tobin, host of the Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com. Throughout the year, on the Soybean School, we'll bring you timely agronomic video content from planting to harvest, from the latest agronomic research to the latest in production technology. Check out our massive video library on YouTube, RealAgriculture.com, or download the audio podcast versions wherever you get your podcasts. The Soybean School is brought to you by Mazik Seeds and Lalamon Plant Care.
The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is a video series that showcases the latest in canola research and production agronomy. Learn from some of the best at your own pace through quick and timely producer-focused videos available on our YouTube channel. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is the quickest way to keep up to date on all the latest in canola production. Boost your canola IQ with the Canola School, brought to you by BASF, and visit canolaschool.com.
You know what's interesting? Sometimes, you make analysis and you're really correct, right? And there's times where you say something on the radio, and then I don't know, like 2-3 months later, it's like, I shouldn't have said that. And I've had that in presentations where I'll especially, at one time I was talking about, hey, the next Canadian Prime Minister is going to be Pierre Poilievre. Well, that didn't really work out, right? We all make mistakes. No one is perfect. But we got to bring in the Real Ag Issues panel here. Somebody that's really not perfect, who really got ahead of themselves and maybe should have pumped the brakes a little bit with his negativity. Kelvin Heppner, coming out of Altona, Manitoba, after opening day of Blue Jays baseball, said season's over. And here we sit, July 3rd, tied for first place in the American League East. What does he have to say for himself?
How did I know you were going to bring this up? And first, I didn't realize you were going to bring it up first thing, though.
Well, you got to lead with the heavy. Yep.
Apparently. Well, I guess it's better to set expectations low and exceed them than to have high expectations and fail at getting them. So I don't know. Maybe as a Toronto hockey fan as well, that's kind of the name of the game, and maybe that's explanation for it. But certainly fun to watch them play lately.
They've played fantastic. Clearly, to be fair, so far have exceeded their expectations. Like, their run differential between the Yankees and the Blue Jays is 100 runs. Like, they should not be tied with the Yankees, and because there's lots of stats that would say otherwise. And playing well. They tried to lose yesterday after a pretty substantial lead after the second inning, so they looked like they were going to go full Blue Jay there, Kelvin. And they held on. So things are going well for the Toronto Blue Jays. Also joining us, she's pretty happy. The Senators have re-signed Claude Giroux. It is Lyndsey Smith coming out of Ottawa, Ontario. Lyndsey, how are we doing?
Thank you for mentioning hockey stuff, because I have not, since the RealAg team watched some baseball together in Toronto in April, I don't think I've watched a single game.
Oh, really?
So
they didn't really get the appetite going?
I really enjoy going to the live games. It's a lot of fun. But yeah, I don't actually. I watch baseball highlights sometimes because that's what's on. The way I consume baseball. Yeah, exactly. But no, things are looking great for the hockey season ahead. I know Chris is super excited and has been trolling his Leafs fans' friends. Say that 3 times fast. Quite a bit. So Calvin and I could talk about that one too, because there's some stuff going on over there.
Chris,
we're doing all right.
Chris trolls the Leafs with me. And I'm always like, you need to send this to Kelvin. He's like, don't worry, I already did.
He already did. Yeah, he gets me to send them too.
We established yesterday on the show that one of the worst things you can do is let Chris Moore in your head. Jen Dolman was on the show, and she was like,
welcome to my world, everybody. Anyway, so no, but we are enjoying such things. We're also enjoying a little storm that rolled through here. For anyone watching on YouTube, I've also been attacked by insects many times. It's an insect year, so I've got bites all over me. But it has been a wonderful week. Celebrating Canada Day. I know this show is running for the 4th of July for our American friends. It's a weird week though.
It is.
We're recording this on Thursday for Friday, but we started work yesterday, which was Wednesday, not a Monday. Everything is messed up.
Very
I
confusing.
have a really hard time. It's very confusing.
Yeah. Well, and I was saying to my wife this morning, we were having coffee, and I was these short weeks where they're just like crunched. It really drops you out of your cadence. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, the weekend's coming and we got a whole bunch of content to get ready and get, prep for next week. So it's this is a weird week with Canada Day on the Tuesday, July 4th on the Friday. It's a lot of fireworks. A lot.
Kelvin kept all his fingers this week. I assume.
I did, yeah.
I didn't.
We had our annual Canada Day camping with friends, something that started back during COVID when there were restrictions on getting together. We've continued that tradition and we set off fireworks. Everybody came and camped from Monday to Tuesday just because people had to go to work on Wednesday. So we had Canada Day Eve fireworks at our place, and I think everybody kept the eardrums might be worse for wear, but the fingers digits are still intact.
I saw a crazy Instagram video. This is one of those do not do it at home.
Is it in the front yard on the garage or in front of the garage?
There is that one. That's epic. That's an epic one. This one was they were playing wiffle ball with Roman candles.
Oh God.
And I sent it to a couple friends and it was like, next time we're at the lake, last time it was the human cannonball or the human slingshot we were going to maybe make. Now maybe it's wiffle ball with I would not have.
You have to catch a Roman candle, or what's
try to hit
idea?
it. You have to try to hit it.
Try to hit it.
Okay.
With a plastic bat, a fiery object coming your way. I don't know if that's a great way to defend yourself.
No, that's kind of like Randy Johnson without control coming at you on fire.
Yeah.
This is true.
Yeah. I feel like we should get the stats on firework injuries the first week of July. Like, how many 1,000% do you think it goes up?
A lot. I have one very close call made on a July 4th weekend in Whitefish, Montana. I don't need to tell the whole story, but that's the closest where it's like, oh my God, this may be the end right here.
This is how it ends, guys.
This is it. Yeah. Going down in a burning heap of flames on July 4th on the edge of a dock on Whitefish Lake. Yes.
Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway.
Okay. Let's get started here. Kelvin, you were covering the story. Bunge and Viterra, deals closed. She's all done. Now what?
That's the question, and there are a lot of big questions that we have yet to get answers to. The deal, like you said, has crossed the finish line. The integration has started. Our understanding is it will take some time. But we have Viterra, the largest grain company with the most elevators in Canada, combining forces with Bunge, which has the most crush plants in Canada. Viterra has 60-some grain elevators across Western Canada. Bunge has 7. Well, the new company together now has 7 of the 14 canola and soybean crush facilities. And so I guess there's still big questions now about what this means for the market, for farm gate prices, what happens with the plans for what was supposed to be the world's largest canola crush plant to be built in Regina. Is there any chance that it still goes ahead? Who's going to buy the 6 elevators the Canadian government has said Bunge has to sell? There's money that Bunge has to spend as part of the conditions for approval in Canada. There's a bunch of different things here that questions to be answered. How are they going to keep the G3 business separate? That there's supposed to be a firewall between G3 and Bunge after this, as Bunge holds a 25% stake in G3's business, and G3 directly competes with Viterra grain elevators and port facilities, and so questions about how well that will work. What happens to the Viterra name and brand? And so, yeah, lots of questions to be answered here in the coming weeks, and we're digging into it. I will say, though, grain company culture is to not be overly transparent with media, and so we're working on it.
Yeah, it would be great to have them on to talk about kind of what the plan is and the intentions. I know you, like you said, you're working on it, but still working on it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm not sure. I was going to say I'm not sure what the benefit is there. So I really do I think there are some incredibly valid questions and also an opportunity for Bunge as a company to sort of lay out the mechanics of what happens going forward. Like, they have a significant customer base that they are going to be servicing, and don't they want to communicate that? So give us a call.
Are those 6 grain elevator assets they're going to sell? We don't know the buyer yet, right? Correct? Is that what you said?
Correct. We haven't heard yet. No.
Yeah, too large of an asset for a new co-op to start, and to kind of take that kind of a step, but just probably maybe it's not the right time either. That would be a lot to chew off.
Yeah, timing might be difficult. Some of those types of entities, look at Northwest Terminal in Saskatchewan, have certainly been struggling the last number of years. That terminal is certainly in trouble, and so I'm not sure that there's appetite for that right now. But these are the facilities that the Canadian government is forcing Bunge and Viterra to divest are all older, smaller grain elevators, not the newest, most efficient, high throughput facilities. They are all kind of in the markets generally of the crush plants just down the road here from where I'm at in Altona, Manitoba, and then in Nipawin, Saskatchewan, on the eastern side of Saskatchewan. And so, they are for sale. It'll be interesting. I haven't heard a lot of rumors in terms of who is potentially shopping for them and what that will involve. There's also now 2 canola crush plants here in southern Manitoba within 75 kilometers or less than 50 miles of each other, and I'm curious how that's going to affect our canola market here going forward. And then I guess another angle to this whole story is that this is kind of another chapter, or you could say another epilogue in the history book of the Saskatchewan wheat pool, which is where Viterra originated back in 2007. I believe it was when Sask Wheat Pool bought Agricor United, and I remember walking down the hallway in university as some of the kids were sharing the news that this new company called Viterra had been formed out of Sask Wheat Pool and Agricor United, and then along came Glencore later on, and now Glencore is going to be a small minority owner in this new merger or acquisition. In some ways it's an acquisition, in some ways it's a merger, as Glencore and the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board, BC Investment Board, as what Management Corp as well, remain very small minority stakeholders in Bunge after this combination that took effect yesterday.
Lyndsey, go ahead. You're going to say.
So I just have a question of, so when we're talking about the what Canada laid out for approval, as far as they have to unload certain assets, they have to invest a certain amount of money, they have to keep headquarters in Regina for 5 years or whatever. But what is the timeline on spinning off some of these assets? Because it could mean there's a heck of a deal out there to be had if you've got some extra money laying around, and these things have to get sold on a certain timeline. So is there one? Do we know if there's a deadline for such things?
I do not.
It's a good question. Back in January, when the order in council was introduced regarding it, I forget if the details were in there. I'd have to do a refresher into that. I haven't heard a deadline around it.
Well, and
I don't. I spent some time going back through all the stories that you had written, Kelvin, from that mid-January time period and going backwards, and I couldn't find anything there for a timeline either. So, yeah,
it is an end of an era. You think about the Mayo Schmidt Viterra period and the aspirations and what they were trying to make that in Canada and Australia specifically, and how that all created shareholder value from the sale and the breaking up of assets and moving them around. It's been quite a transition period as those assets have moved into a number of different hands over the past more than a decade, I guess. Hey, let's take a break. We've got more coming up on RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147. It's the RealAg Issues panel, back right after this.
Soil health is under pressure, but real solutions start below the surface. Black Earth offers a full suite of humic solutions, from high-purity granules to powder, liquid, and soluble formulations, all powered by pure Humulite. Formulated for performance, backed by consistency, trusted by growers worldwide from one of the world's rarest reserves. Grow stronger with the power of Black Earth Humulite. Learn more from Mine to Market at blackearth.com.
It's summertime, and you've got a lot of important decisions to make when it comes to your corn crop. Let the Corn School on RealAgriculture.com help guide you through those big decisions with input from leading experts in the field. If it's spray timing, disease identification, or any other field issue, the Corn School's got you covered. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by BASF and Pride Seeds.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio. Shaun Haney, Lyndsey Smith, and Kelvin Heppner, all of Real Agriculture. And just remind everybody that we are recording this on Thursday, so if something crazy happened on Thursday night, and you're like, why aren't they talking about it? Just because of all the holiday mess of this week, we're recording this on Thursday, so keep that in mind when you hear some of the things that we have to say in case something big broke overnight. Hey, Genesis Fertilizer is making real progress toward providing reliable, locally produced fertilizer. Join the ownership group and protect your bottom line. Learn more at genesisfertilizers.com. Okay, let's jump to, Lyndsey, a friend of the program, we'll call him that. He comes on here whenever we ask. We really do appreciate it. David Coletto of Abacus Data. He's got some new polling of Canadians out in terms of how does the Canadian public feel about the early days of the Mark Carney time as Prime Minister.
That's right. So this is the first polling we've seen sort of specifically around how Carney is doing on priorities. So Abacus asked several questions, but basically they wanted to know, do the priorities match what you care about? Would achieving them make a difference? And is the government actually getting them done? And this is a survey of 1,500 adults. This was a mid-June, so June 17th to 19th survey. And this is what we got. So that's just the context there. So that does mean that that's before some of the things were passed in Parliament. So just keep that in mind. But it does seem, at least, that for the most part, Canadians are remaining positive with Carney and are feeling like he is achieving what he set out to do or promised to do, at least at the outset. There are, of course, differences, and I highly recommend anybody head over to Abacus Data for a full breakdown of what's public. There are differences, though, between how people lean politically, but overall, people are very pleased with Carney. Now, I think this is important to note that it was middle of June, and I think we are going to talk about the digital services tax. I don't know if that will change things, but I do feel like if there has been perhaps a misstep, that might be one that would change Canadians' opinion. But so far, Canadians in general feel that Carney is doing a good job, and most importantly is sticking with what he said he would prioritize and actually delivering on it. And those priorities still relatively match where Canadians are at. Affordability still a big thing. Where he's maybe not doing as well. The question was how Carney is doing on unifying Canada's economy. Only about 49% said that's on track or better. International partnerships only came in at about 46% positive. So there are some areas that aren't maybe as, as positive.
Right.
But
okay, but you mentioned the digital
overall
tax. Do you think that may change the numbers based on the fact that people were in favor of the digital services tax, or the perception that he rolled over on it for President Trump?
Yeah, absolutely rolled over on it. I think most people, like President Trump apparently, had no idea what digital sales tax was or when it was going to happen. To remind everyone, this was actually approved a year ago. We were in the calendar, or a full year of implementation. So the companies knew this was coming. This had been on the books. So it was not a surprise, regardless of what some people say. I think, though, that, Carney ran on elbows up and we're going to strengthen Canada and Canada doesn't take any guff and all that sort of stuff. I would say that most of us have seen, and we can agree that he's been relatively diplomatic and has handled Trump well in face-to-face meetings at the G7, et cetera. But this sort of, I don't know, I think the overarching sort of sense is the axing of this digital sales tax a whole year in the making was definitely sort of a rollover, because I can't see what we got in return. Now, I'm not privy to all the conversations, but there's nothing publicly anyway that anyone in the Carney government can point to and say, hey, look, yes, we removed it, but it's because we got fill in the blank. There's no fill in the blank.
Maybe. So, we don't know.
I think there is. The fill in the blank talks are back on. But that's not how you negotiate, because that is completely enabling the other side. If they're constantly just threatening, hey, if you want to talk to us, you got to give us more. You want to talk to us, you got to give us more. Like that, you can't keep caving in on that. Easy
policy to get rid of, though. Really, I think it wasn't exactly like Canadians were like digital services tax.
No, but whether or not you agree with the policy domestically and the way they went about just completely rescinding it instead of postponing it or continuing to have it on the table. Hey, why don't we kick this? So the main reason it came to a head is because the deadline for the first payment from these companies was June 30th. That's why it came to a head, and why Trump tweeted or put it on Truth Social last Friday. To me, you could have the Canadian government had other strategic options here. Why not say, hey, in true Trump fashion, we'll kick the deadline down the road 2 weeks. Maybe we change our mind in 2 days, but in 2 weeks we'll collect it, or 6 weeks or 6 months, whatever. To me, they could have. There was some middle ground here that they could have taken that may have given them more leverage in, or at least kept it as a card to play in negotiations that they didn't choose. And like you said, Lyndsey, we're not privy to what's happening behind the scenes. So maybe there was something agreed to behind the scenes that we don't know about.
This was one of the big Ds, right? In terms of, because there was digital services tax, defense spending, and there's one more.
Dairy.
Okay, so this is one of the big Ds. So I don't know. Well, I think it was honestly, on the weekend show, did a whole segment just talking about kind of thinking about what really going on here. The whole U.S. walking away from the trade agreement and thank you for your attention to this matter. It's all a part of the play. And, there was, you watch the news that night and everyone's running around with a chicken with their head cut off. Well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And talks are back on. I don't know. They're going to come to some sort of deal. And I don't believe dairy is going to be that big on the table.
And what's it going to be worth? So Carney again met with auto companies yesterday, talked about this July 21st deadline, how they're working to get a deal by then, and how the counter tariffs are going to be adjusted. He specifically said that he spoke to the auto industry about changes to the counter tariffs taking effect then. So what will that look like? That's a big question. But to me, what is a deal worth with a dishonest broker like President Trump? You can't put any weight into anything he says other than what governs his behavior day to day. It's like dealing with a toddler and trying to figure out a long-term strategy around that and investment plans around that. It doesn't work.
Well, I think you're sort of living to fight another day. I don't know what it's worth. These are
on July 21st and it's broken July 23rd, and then
I think I think the UK sort of wrote it where it's let's get over ourselves. We have an agreement that we don't have any details on still to this day, and attention elsewhere.
That's the main thing, is just try to keep the attention off yourself. I think that's the best approach.
And for Canada's benefit, they need to put this behind them because Carney's got some big worries when it comes to getting this economy going. U.S. economy is showing resilience and strength, and Carney wants Canada to be attached to that and be a part of it. And so I think he's trying to put this behind him as quickly as he can.
Further to that, Canada, we saw new export data from StatsCan today that showed Canada's goods trade deficit narrowed in May after hitting a record high back in April. And also U.S. trade data released here recently shows that, what was the percent? 91% of Canadian exports to the U.S. crossed the border duty-free in May, which that's under the CUSMA USMCA exemption. So that's a massive increase in the amount of trade that's moving under the USMCA agreement versus back in March when the US tariffs were imposed on everything that wasn't under the CUSMA deal. So Canada right now has, I believe, the lowest effective tariff rate into the U.S. of all countries. So relatively speaking, Canada is in an advantageous position right now that Carney should try to be keeping. The concern, though, is, again, if, like you alluded to, Shaun, if the U.S. economy has a hiccup or worse, and what that does to our Canadian economy as well. But right now, I'd say Carney should be working to maintain this tariff advantage that Canada is holding at this time. So, and that's. And I'm going to think really optimistically here, okay? I think the get on this giving up the digital services tax is not just about getting back to the negotiating table. I think it is a big putting your chips in and trying to avoid this blanket tariff idea. Trying to avoid what the UK faced with this 10% blanket tariff. That, I think that's the play that they're really pushing toward. I'm not sure how confident they can get that across the line because, from a revenue generation standpoint, that 10% tariff is really important to the White House. But I'm hoping, that's my optimistic outlook, that's what that play is really about to get in return. But we'll see. We will see. Okay, let's take a break. We've got more coming up here on the Real Ag Issues panel. Back right after this.
Built on over 100 years of seed innovation and unwavering commitment to farmers, Pioneer 100 Series canola hybrids deliver a step change in yield performance and agronomic traits. This isn't just better canola, it's different canola. Pioneer 100 Series. Contact your local Pioneer sales representative or visit pioneer.com/100 series to learn more today.
How's your seed quality? What should you treat with? What about herbicide carryover and environmental concerns? Spring is here, and you've got a lot of things to think about in regards to your pulse crop. The Pulse School on Real Agriculture has information and advice for all these questions and more to help you navigate this season. Brought to you by BASF. Pulse School episodes are available at pulseschool.com, realagriculture.com, or as a podcast on your favorite streaming service. Download the latest episode today.
And we're back here on RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. And this segment's brought to you by Ag Expert. Deep in the fields and deep in the data to back up your decisions on the farm. Get started at agexpert.ca. We got Kelvin Heppner, Lyndsey Smith, Shaun Haney, all of Real Agriculture. Lyndsey, what should we cover? What do you want to do next? What's your next topic?
Well, this kind of isn't fair because the topics this week are very Shaun and Kelvin and not very Lyndsey. So the next one on our list has to do with like trade talks in Vietnam, and you wanted to mention something about it. So I'm just going to say fill your boots, but that's not really what I want to talk about. I want to go back to like the beef market update and talk about hot dogs.
Wait,
or rodeo. Let's talk about rodeo.
Okay. What's your favorite on the weekend show? Because the Calgary Stampede has now begun. And so basically the city of Calgary shuts down for 10 days. Good luck getting an answer back from anybody, as nobody works during this period. Rodeo, my favorite thing about the Stampede, what would be your favorite rodeo event, Kelvin?
I don't know, bull riding or steer wrestling, probably. Chuck wagons, of course, at Calgary Stampede are a classic, but local.
They're lame because they're down to 3 wagons and they don't throw everything in the back of the wagon anymore.
And we don't get them at our local rodeos, but I don't know. I'm a fan of all of them.
Well, shout out to Ponoka Rodeo for still running 4 wagons. Let's just say that.
There you go. Shout out, Kelvin. Do they have the mini chucks, or is that only like because they do that the little mini horses?
Yeah, the Manitoba Stampede in Morris has
that. Agribition has that.
Lyndsey, we were talking about this earlier. You like mutton busting? That's your favorite.
No, it's not my favorite. I just really quite enjoy it. Okay, obviously,
watching Chris do it.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. He does it as a full-time job, you guys. It is quite adorable to see those kids. Like some of those kids are so little and they're so fearless, and it's amazing. And sheep are surprisingly fast, so it always impresses people. I am with Kelvin. Apologies to all my barrel racer friends. I really like steer wrestling. I also like saddle bronc. I do not like bull riding, and I will tell you why.
You like saddle bronc better than bareback riding?
Yeah, yeah, I'm okay with it. But also, bull riding is just, people get hurt, like really hurt, and I get very upset. So I can't do it.
So bull riding is definitely an attraction. It can be anticlimactic though, because a lot of times, like if the bulls win, like where it's just like 3 and off in every ride, it's sort of like,
I know. It's kind of like, meh. Yeah, exactly. It's nice to actually have some rides in there so that there's some points to look at. Anyway, I will say in general, though, I've actually never been to the Calgary Stampede, everybody.
Whoa.
What? Whoa. I know. I've never been. Never. It's like one of those like Canadiana bucket list things I've never done. Oh. But I will tell you that the Selkirk Rodeo does overlap. I think it's next weekend. It overlaps with the Calgary Stampede by 1 weekend. And that was always one of my favorite. It was the very first horse show I ever did. Used to do the goat show and love it. Selkirk Rodeo is great. I've done Morris as well. Yeah.
I've heard, like I've always wanted to go to like the big rodeo. I think it's in Cheyenne. And one I've really heard, a local one that I've never been to, is the one in Shodo, Montana. I think it's this weekend on July 4th weekend. I've always wanted to go down to Shodo for that one.
There's still time. Get going. Anyway.
Yeah, get hustling. Not too far from Shodo right now. Yeah. I think I have 3. My top 3. Steer wrestling. Love steer wrestling. Skill, technique, strength. It's kind of a combination. Also timed. It's also a timed event.
Mm-hmm. I know. I like it.
Barrel racing. Love barrel racing.
So much fun.
Yes. It's just like spur the horse. Yeah. Horse takes off. Just hold on for your life. And then take those corners.
You do a lot of work, actually. You don't just hold on.
No, I love it. And it's funny when you watch barrel racing where it's sort of like when you're watching curling on TV, it sort of becomes like,
you're like, it's not that hard.
You become like an analyst. Oh, wide turn there. Wide turn. Got to be better, right? You just like, it's hilarious how we do that.
It's so true.
One of my secrets is, not a secret anymore because I'm telling you, I watch an abnormal amount of Cowboy Channel. I watch a lot of rodeo. I love rodeo on TV. I really do.
Yeah, I do too.
And the third, Indian relay race. Love it. So fast, like just great. It's just chaos.
Yes.
Back. Love it.
And there is something absolutely stunning to watch people like mount a horse from the ground that is like going full, like it just, the amount of, like, it's absolutely mind boggling.
The costumes, like it's just the garb and like, I just think it's so cool. Hey, Kelvin, go ahead.
I was going to say, how widespread an area do they have these competitions? Because it's not something that we see out this way. And I know it's a Calgary Stampede tradition, but I'm curious.
Well, I looked it up this morning. Yeah, the Indian relay race, they do them all through Wyoming and Colorado. And so I know, because I saw there was a whole bunch of different tribes that have associations where they compete at the game, indigenous groups in different rodeo games and stuff like that. So I think it's pretty widespread, kind of maybe Alberta through the western half of the U.S.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it, there's a bunch of YouTube videos. It's great.
I also, if I may, I want to on this topic, and it seems strange, but we've been talking about New World screwworm, and maybe this does tie in with the news that the U.S. did say they were going to open up at least some movement of cattle across the Mexican border. But I was amazed in learning about New World screwworm is how many rodeo events evolved, or rodeos themselves happened because of screwworm. So a lot of them came into play because cowboys were spending so much time treating cattle. You had to rope cattle, you had to steer wrestle cattle, you had to whatever. So it actually is like a key part of rodeo events and how rodeo evolved is trying to defeat screwworm. So there's your little historical tidbit.
Very cool.
It's pretty cool. Mm-hmm.
I'm curious how many of the Cowboys have moved on from like chewing Copenhagen to Zins. That's another thing I wonder. Be a nice little doing streeter interviews on the grounds.
Oh my gosh, could you please, if you go to one this weekend, could you just be like, "Excuse me, sir"?
Yeah. Hey, can you
hang on?
Okay, well, one thing I want to mention about the Vietnam thing, Kelvin, and you can tell me that I'm wrong. That's fine. But one of so apparently the U.S. and Vietnam have some sort of agreement. The Journal had a big component of that is dealing with transshipping issues out of China. Maybe a bit of a signal, one of the asks that we're going to have when Canada and the U.S. work out whatever that agreement looks like in components of it. We haven't heard a lot about that, but we know that laundering, I say laundering, but it's not probably the way to put it, but moving Chinese products through other countries that have favorable trade agreements into the U.S. is definitely frowned upon right now.
Yeah, and that's where this deal that Trump announced this week has a 20% rate on regular imports from Vietnam into the U.S. and a 40% tariff on goods that are transshipped. But that's where you get into the details and the actual practicality of that. I'm not sure how they enforce or track it. I guess if you have severe enough penalties and make an example of a few companies in doing that, it might scare people away from it. But I think it is largely a signal. Not sure that it will be able to be enforced in reality in terms of how do you measure contents and trace them back to their source country of origin. That's something that I think supply and demand markets find ways around that all the time.
Trying to be a border guard or like a receiver at times like this where things keep on changing, it's got to be kind of a head scratcher. Just be like, oh my goodness, I don't know.
And like to Kelvin's point, this isn't a new phenomenon. The administration of trying to like keep track of all these things, whatever, and then trying to have all these deals in place and say, no, you have to do this, you can't do this. I don't know. It just, I don't know how it, even if you agree to it, how you enforce it.
Right, but we've seen this on the other foot where, China wasn't taking canola from Viterra and Richardson, and all of a sudden Canada shipping a lot of canola to the UAE to be crushed, right? So,
yep.
Markets
and
find
that's
a way.
just it. Markets find, and yes, like if product is going to go somewhere, they're going to figure out where they can send it that it'll get there. Because demand doesn't change just because countries fight about things.
Yeah, you guys mentioned those the auto manufacturers were meeting with Carney. One of the things they're pushing for is get rid of these EV mandates, get them out of here. That would be definitely a flip if they were to do that. Would it not be?
Yeah,
I didn't read a whole lot about it. That would be a flip if they are, because that would certainly be a change in direction for the Canadian government's auto policy in terms of the EV mandates and the tariffs, of course. And certainly that's something that our agriculture exporting commodities sectors would welcome if the EV tariffs are also part of that.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, at the same time, like there are also, I mean, these companies have invested heavily in trying to move towards this too. And so there'd be companies that would not necessarily welcome such a thing. So,
well, Cadillac's an example. They've gone back where they were telling everybody where, hey, after 2000, I think after this year, 2025, all Escalades were going to be electric, and they've said not anymore, right? So
because it also goes hand in hand with whether or not, you know, countries or states or provinces are going to have regulation on what you can buy, right? Like if those get lifted, right? Because we had some of those that by 2030 or whatever, there'll be no more. Like if the whole line of regulation changes, then yeah, without them, there's just no demand. There's not enough demand. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Those mandates are still in place here in Canada, and Carney hasn't shown a signal that he plans to lift them. But I think probably from the automakers' perspective, Shaun, their reason for wanting the government to pull back on those mandates has more to do with staying in sync with their counterparts across the border, and of course with how complementary, not integrated, or both, our auto industry is in North America.
But Lyndsey, is he mocking me?
No.
I think he is.
No, I think Kelvin is pointing
He's
out
mocking me. I have a slide in my presentations where I say this, and now he's mocking me.
Wow, that's a coincidence.
Well, yeah, what a coincidence.
I'll show you a coincidence.
Yeah.
What do you mean coincidence?
A coincidence.
Oh, I think they're saying it because the sales suck. The sales suck. You look at EV sales, like auto manufacturers, they just don't want to build cars. They want to sell cars. And EV cars are not selling right now for whatever reason.
Well, yeah. I mean, or rather they're selling, but maybe not to the level that they need them to be. Right? I mean,
yeah.
Anyway. I mean,
and right now, the way the mandate starts in 2026, and according to how it's written right now, by 2030, 60% of new car sales in Canada are supposed to be EV, and by 2035, it's supposed to be 100%. So imagine working at an auto dealer and trying to sell vehicles, and the pushback that they will feel in terms of actually having to be the implementation point of this government policy if it actually would go ahead, which I think we can. Well, I guess formally it still is in place, but hard to believe it stays.
Well, here on the RealAg Radio Show on Rural Radio 147, we got to wrap it up. I want to wish everybody a great weekend. Big shout out to everybody in the U.S. Have a great July 4th weekend. Stay safe with those better fireworks, everybody. Stay safe. If you have any feedback on today's show, you can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. For those of you listening on the RealAg Radio podcast, we got a bonus segment, and we'll do that right after we finish the show. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connect with RealAg Radio, and we'll chat again next week. Cheers, everybody. And we are in the bonus here on RealAg Radio. Speaking of the bonus and basketball, did you guys see the contract, Kelvin, that was signed where
the Canadian Shea, I don't know how to say his last name, Alexander?
Yeah. He now makes more than like the top 9 NHL players combined or something like that. Like, it's crazy.
Wild how much difference there is in what those sports pay their players.
Yeah, hockey is definitely the lesser child. If you look at basketball, football, even college football at this point, and compare that to hockey, it's TV deals make a big difference. And I don't know if we talked about this going back, but man, the NHL Stanley Cup final ratings in the U.S. were like horrific. They were so bad. I think lacrosse on the night that Florida Panthers won the cup. I think lacrosse beat it on TV in Florida. Like it was really bad, really bad. So we'll see.
It's Florida. Okay. Anyway.
Well, so was it? I heard one theory on that though, that to not judge the state of Florida numbers on the TV, because by that time summer's in full gear and a lot of people have left Florida. So there's actually a lot of Florida Panther fans that have spread back out across the country. But as an aggregate, the number's not very good at all. I didn't see the Canadian number. I don't know. I imagine it was pretty good. Imagine it was pretty good. But okay, Lyndsey, what did we not talk about?
That's a great question. I'm trying to think what even we talked about the Bunge Viterra thing. That's pretty important. Few news items that we covered on RealAgriculture.com this week. Actually, it involves sheep. So there is an award here in Ontario, an Early Career Research Award, which I find kind of a fascinating idea for an award. So it's $100,000. It was split 60-40 between two researchers affiliated with the University of Guelph. I should bring up the names here, but one is looking at biosecurity measures in sheep and researching. This is actually really cool. So they want to use like a luminescent type product to basically show where your biosecurity measures are perhaps falling short, which just sounds really cool. So this will be like a tracking sort of thing of this bioluminescence thing. And then the other is on poultry and into avian influenza research. So these two researchers get this award. And the whole point of it, which I think is really cool, is it's for someone who is like early in their career to fund some of the research that they want to do. So PhDs and that sort of stuff, working with RealAg here in Ontario. So that was pretty cool. And also here in Ontario, two things. One we didn't talk about last week, I don't think. $5 million announced for community pastures improvement through the SCAP program, and also an updated environmental farm plan is rolling out next week for Ontario producers.
When you say new environmental farm plan, what is it like?
Well, it's just updated. They update it every once in a while. So Ontario, like Alberta, has had an environmental farm plan program for quite some time. And so the programs need to be updated. The delivery needs to be updated, that sort of stuff. And so, because new research comes around, new processes, new technology, et cetera. And so, as of July 14th, it's basically a new curriculum for the environmental farm plan for anyone who's interested in doing it. And EFPs typically have to be done if you're going to access any funding. So that is where a lot of Ontario farmers, Alberta would be the same. If you're going to access certain government funds, you have to have a completed environmental farm plan. So, yeah.
There's a lot of work.
There's a lot going on last week.
There's a lot of work.
It is. Yeah.
Is it paperwork?
It isn't. Yes,
Yep.
it's paperwork. There's
paperwork.
yeah.
Some of the provinces have gone to online. Like here in Manitoba, it's online delivery as of a few years ago. It's a process that I've started, but I've never completed with our farm because of the paperwork. And there are a lot of things that you got to make sure you're doing things the way you're doing. And so,
are there consultants you can hire to fill out the forms for you? I think our Wi-Fi went.
Potentially, I'm not aware of any.
Sorry. I think it's my internet. Yeah. Okay. Huh. I electronic form, paperwork, it's kind of equally like.
Yeah. So, and part of this update is still that there is an electronic component, but like to Kelvin's point, it is still a lot of work. You have to identify things that you need to fix, then you need to fix them, then you need to, so it is. But again, like, some farms need them for other, if they're a certain commodity like dairy, et cetera, it works into, ProAction, et cetera. But you do need them if you're going to access certain funding. And so, I will, I'm like you, I can actually see my binder sitting up there, Kelvin. Started the process, have not finished it. So I think that happens a lot. And then I get the emails every once in a while. Hey, you started this. You should finish it. And it's like, don't nag me. Anyway.
Leave me alone. My choice.
Leave me alone. I have a lot going on.
You know what changed
You know what? No. So I haven't actually gone through it in depth, but just based on the presser, they didn't have significant details on what changed. But it is something that they do every once in a while. They update it, so every couple of years.
Kelvin, what have
I'm
been
curious whether there's farms that have qualified in the past up to what?
Do they have to renew?
I'm curious whether there will be change. Yeah, renew and whether there could be issues there.
Yeah, I think they're valid for 5 years. So I do think you do have to update them. And I think they're every 5 years. Anyone with environmental power plant, I think it's through OSCA. If I'm wrong, just give me a dingle and I'll sort it out. But yeah, I think it's a 5-year plan.
Kelvin, what did we not talk about?
It's a story that I think you can shed some light on here, Shaun. The AgReliant Genetics deal to be acquired by this Argentinian plant genetics company, GDM. GDM, one of the biggest soybean genetic suppliers around the world, and AgReliant is the parent company of Pride Seeds here in Canada, AgriGold, LG Seeds in the U.S. I'm curious what this might mean for, I guess, especially the soybean and corn seed markets.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty interesting. JDM's been incredibly aggressive on the acquisition side of the equation. Obviously, very known for soybean genetics and out-licensing of some of their germplasm. This is a big play in corn. I don't know what AgReliant's market share was in the U.S. Somebody had told me it was like 3, 4, 5%. I don't have a for sure number on that, so there's definitely opportunity to grow. If you remember going back... Oh, shoot. They did a brand reduction. AgReliant had more brands, and they consolidated into LG Seeds and AgriGold a number of years ago. One person had told me that JDM is heavily they like to not have multi-brands, so that'll be interesting on do we see a further reduction in the U.S.? And what about Pride Seeds? AgReliant, Pride Seeds in Canada is a part of that. Do we see, I've talked to a few people that are quite excited about this change and an opportunity and JDM's willingness to invest going forward. But you would expect, when there's acquisition like this, things sort of, everything's going to stay the same and don't you worry, we're all going to be good. And then, it's kind of always about 12 months later where we start to see some of the changes implemented and things like that. So we'll have to keep our eye on it. But everybody I've talked to, pretty positive about it and looking at it as, hey, this is an opportunity for new investment in the corn sector in North America.
Also, like KWS had a news release out too. They were one of the joint venture partners behind AgReliant. They noted that they were planning kind of realigning their corn portfolio, focusing on sugar beets, cereal crops, vegetable varieties in the North American market. So interesting.
Yeah, AgReliant was KWS and Lima Grain.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So that was the JV. In the U.S. market, and they had been struggling sales-wise and losing share. So this is, I guess, being viewed as an opportunity. They got a buyer, and the market's tough, even though acres are up, and maybe a good time to exit and let somebody else have a try. Mm-hmm. So, but cool. Yeah, I've seen it. People have been talking about it positively, so we'll definitely have to see where it goes. This morning on RFD TV, we were chatting about the Bunge Viterra acquisition where we started the show, and I'm curious, do we see a real flurry here of new M&A activity? Right, it's been kind of a little bit of a downside in the cropping sector. You'd have to think ag tech. There's an opportunity there for consolidation, natural consolidation. The biological space, an opportunity for M&A activity, or this is a time where you see good balance sheets taking over bad balance sheets. The biological sector is quite noisy. I don't know where we would go for crop protection mergers going forward. Like, we can only consolidate so much.
That'll be more on the biological side.
Yeah, I think so, right?
I think so.
Machinery, short lines, there always is that opportunity. I don't know. What do you guys think? Lyndsey, what do you think?
Yeah, so it's an interesting thing. These things they do come in waves, right? And likely somebody much smarter than me could point out all the reasons of which cycles sort of end up exactly that, Shaun, sort of the stronger company eating up the weaker, not always, huge eating small. Like, sometimes these are very, similar sized businesses. Maybe it's just a portion of a business, as you said, like with the biologicals, et cetera. Like it might just be an acquisition of a specific product or line from somewhere. But it does sort of feel like it has maybe been a little while, right? And so is this, just an indication that we're going to see more of some of these, and where they come from? I will say, you mentioned ag tech, so I will use this opportunity to put in a plug for Monday's episode of The Agronomist, where Peter Repeat Johnson is going to be guest host Monday night. We're going to talk about sort of all the spot spraying, the see and spray, the selective spraying technology that's out there, and uses for it, limits of it, etc. But that's a space that we've seen, individual sort of up and comers come up with one component or one part, and that, do we see those sorts of these tech pieces get picked up by different companies, etc. So on the crop protection side, how much more consolidation can we have? And she says that, and then look out, something's going to happen. So
here's the other piece to that, though, Lindsey, is I think you look at the last round that we had, right? We had ChemChina buying Syngenta. We had Dow, DuPont, and Pioneer coming together, and then we had Bayer Monsanto. Well, Bayer Monsanto looked upon as, it really has not been the outcome that I think Bayer was striving for when they went to their shareholders to make this play, for a number of different reasons. I was thinking last week, I was having a conversation with a seed industry person. We were talking about how you think about the Bayer Monsanto merger from a Canadian context, and BSF's ability to get that spun off asset of the canola business, the Invigor business. There's the real winner out of that Bayer Monsanto merger, if you look at it from that aspect, especially with the opportunity that is for canola in the plains, as whether it's winters or springs or Napises or Gencia, the canola acre with the biofuel push is going to increase in the U.S. and BSF is right there with Invigor. It's just interesting, like the winners and losers years later. And sometimes who you think was going to be the winner, not it, and who are some of the quiet winners. And I just used that example. Very fascinating. I do wonder if on the mega merger side, if Bayer Monsanto doesn't create a little bit of like caution in the market in terms of what's a good deal and what's not. I don't know. Just a thought.
To me, the consolidation where we could potentially see, or another aspect of our industry that we haven't touched on here, is at the farm level, and consolidation there we've seen. If you look at corn prices right now relative to fertilizer prices, urea, nitrogen, it's as almost as you need as many bushels of corn to pay for 1 ton of fertilizer as ever in history. Phosphate, it's by far a record time right now in terms of the number of bushels you need to pay for a ton of fertilizer, and so. Input prices relative to crop prices are certainly putting a squeeze. That's where I think some of this U.S. biofuel policy is determining direction here of overall industry and maybe some of the trends as well. But it's certainly tough times lead to people are forced into making these kinds of decisions to sell and that type of thing, and opportunities come around for companies that don't happen when everybody sees lots of potential in the market.
Yeah, it's kind of the time where you hear cash is king. Those with the best balance sheet win. Like it's all of those kind of old financial sort of sayings, right? Is times like this, and of course the peeps.
In the moment, it's too late, though. In the moment, yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly. And unless you can make decisions that improve the balance sheet, there, and that could, that may be selling some assets to readjust yourself is always an option, but not necessarily the first option that people are looking for. Nobody wants to sell land less than farmers. It's never the right go-to or right away, but yeah, it's going to be fascinating. And in the age factor, right? Like it's not just the financial health, it's the age factor where you look at the aging farm population. It's like, yeah, you know what? I've been kind of eroding the last 2-3 years in terms of my financial position. I may not have somebody coming back. You know what? Exit sounds pretty good. And that's a reality too. That's hard to change that.
And
there's also the political angle to the political angle to mergers and acquisitions, Shaun, do you think Trump administration would be friendly or unfriendly towards a mega merger in an era of populist politics being popular?
It's a very good point.
Which side do they choose? That seems like that could be a potential point of division.
A great variable. I think honestly you're probably underselling that. I think that should be. I think you've hit on something entirely correct. There maybe would be some pushback on some sort of a mega merger. And, you know, I've talked to a few people about this before too, is like, sometimes you get like weird pushes, like we're thinking like mergers and acquisitions where there's like a natural flow. You know, what if you had a large ag equipment dealer company, you know, ag equipment dealership that says, you know what, hey, we want to be in the crop input business. Like there can be weird combinations there. Like, you know, there was you look at what kind of the Netflix business was 8 years ago versus what the Netflix business is today, and how they have like morphed cross lines into live events, sporting. They're talking about, you know, getting into basically like TV, almost becoming almost like a cable network at this point. It can really, this time period can really foster some like when Amazon bought Whole Foods, really, what's that all about? Like, you know, things can come out of nowhere as well.
I do actually really love how our streaming services are essentially, in a lot of ways, evolving back to like cable channels.
I know,
but just
it's cheaper having cable.
Yeah, like, but just differently, right? So it's kind of fascinating of like what people want or what they're going to use maybe doesn't change, but how they use it does. And so it's just as important as how it's delivered.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of fascinating.
Well put. Well, hey, we better wrap it up. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Lyndsey, have yourself a great weekend.
Everyone as well.
Kelvin, you only mocked me twice. I will forgive you. We will talk to you again next week.
You led off the show with that kind of, you set the tone.
He was firing me back. I love it.
Yeah. So much animosity.
Happy 4th of July. I do want to wish a happy 4th of July to our American friends.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, good stuff. Okay, if you have any feedback, we'd love to hear from you. You can send us an email, shaney@realagriculture.com, or call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio. Cheers.